In Myanmar, they drove on the right side of the road, and the driver sat on the right side of the car.
Okay.
So on the outside, which was bizarre
Wait.
to me. So normally the driver...
Right, so it's like having a European car in America.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically.
That would be weird because it doesn't. You want to be closer to the
you want to be closer to the middle so you can see if
Yeah.
you're about to hit someone head on. But
Right.
in Myanmar, it's the only country I've been to where they're driving on the right side of the road with the driver on the right side of the car.
That's an interesting fact. Is that one of those countries that have like triple stacked buses?
I didn't see any. I mean, there were a lot of dirt roads and stuff. Like a lot of the capital was like very low-rise buildings.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So how did you end up getting food poisoning?
It's hard to say with all the foods I ate. It could have been the street foods I ate. Could have been that I bought some jerky from a random food stall and the inside of the jerky was still moist. So there could have been bacteria growing in it. Mm-hmm. Which the food, which I do have a video I could send you that you could probably loop into it. So there was this guy I found who was like selling street food, which I absolutely love street food. Anytime I'm in a country and I see street food, I'm like, yes. The only time I didn't grab the street food was in Hong Kong when a lady was selling grilled iguana feet.
That sounds delicious, bro. Why didn't you grab that?
I don't know. She had a little sign. I was like, it's good for your respiratory system. I'm like, maybe,
in what way? Because it'll make you cough so hard that like you clear your lungs out. All right, so
maybe you can like pick your teeth with the toenails of the iguana afterwards. I don't know.
I'm gonna skip that. Yeah, actually, it sounds good because I'm imagining it in my head having this nice crunch, you know.
But yeah, so back to like Myanmar. So there was this dude. He was just sitting, had this table, and the table had like half a pig's head on it. He just had a meat cleaver just sitting there, like cleaving. No, it was just like laying on the table, like on a butcher block, half a pig's head, and he was just like cleaving little cubed pieces off, like cubing a chunk off the nose, cubing a chunk off the ear. And he had these little tiny toothpicks, and you'd go in and be like, oh, I want like 10 pieces of meat. And he would put these little pieces of cubed meat on the sticks, like, and then in the middle of this table, he had like this boiling pot of like black something, just a boiling black liquid.
Black death.
And he would like cleave off some pieces of the pig head, put them on these sticks, take the sticks, swish them around in the pot of boiling black goop, stick them in a bag and hand them to you. And it's just like, cool, thanks.
Did he speak English?
Nope.
So you couldn't ask him what it was?
I just like saw it. I was like, oh yeah. And like, usually you wouldn't be able to communicate to each other. It'd just be like, he would be like, how many you want? You want like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And I'd be like, I want 10 of them. He's like, cool. All right. X amount of money, like with his fingers, and I would like get the money out, hand it to him. He's like, cool, you're good to go.
So you didn't question the black liquid?
The black liquid I 100% questioned, but I was like, okay, let's do this.
But you didn't question it verbally, you just in your head.
Yeah, I was just like, let's try
You know
this.
how the typical like Disney witch is like stirring a cauldron?
Yeah, that's basically what it looked like.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Well, this man over here decided he would just go ahead and eat it. And that's probably what you got food poisoning from.
And then I like ate some questionable jerky. And I mean, Myanmar was also one of those places we were walking around like in the streets, and there was like this food market. It was a meat market. We're walking around on dirt, out in the sun. People have like chunks of like slabs of meat hung up on meat hooks out in the sun with like flies flying around it.
Classic.
And I'm just like, this definitely doesn't look sanitary, but
I'll take 3.
I didn't buy anything from there.
Oh, good. Actually, you might have been better off.
Well, another thing that could have gave me the food poisoning, because it didn't hit me when I was in Myanmar. So we got on the plane to head back to Beijing, and we had a layover in some city. And I was like, oh, I'm hungry. I'm going to go like get something from a food stall here in the airport. And it came with a duck egg. It was like a boiled duck egg. And the middle of the egg had the yolk had a custard consistency. And in Asia, sometimes they'll give you eggs that have been expired for months if you're not careful.
Well, tell me how the experience was of being food poisoned and like what you did during that time.
Well, I got on the plane, from that place, heading back to Beijing, and I was in the front. I was in the first. I was like, yo, this is like being in first class. Heck yeah. Because they like bumped up where I was sitting, and like halfway through, I was like, something's up with my stomach.
Did it creep up, or was it instantly like, was it nausea or pain?
It like started creeping up. It was more like a nausea. And then I went to the lavatory in the airplane a few times during the flight. And then we finally got back. And then eventually stuff started coming out of both ends. And I was like laid up in bed like, oh, like this feels horrible. Like I need to like be in a place where I can really quickly run to the bathroom for whenever something starts to come up or come out. Did
you tell the flight attendants like, hey, I am experiencing potentially food poisoning?
No, I was just sitting there like flying back. I was like, oh, it's going to be a nice chill flight. And then like halfway, I'm like, something ain't right. And then after I had it for 2 or 3 days, my roommate who went with me to Myanmar started experiencing it. And he ate all the foods I ate except for that duck egg.
So it wasn't the duck egg.
So it may not have been the duck egg. However, considering it hit me a lot faster, the duck egg probably didn't help it at all.
Yeah.
And I think I ate more of the jerky. The jerky, it was concerning to me because it was like these like thick pieces of dried meat, but in the center of it, it was still moist. I'm like, don't think that's the way jerky.
It wasn't fully dehydrated. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds to me like it wasn't fully dehydrated. Okay, so you're on an airplane, you start feeling nausea, you start experiencing what you probably are assuming at this point is food poisoning because you have common sense and you just remembered, oh, I just ate a bunch of random weird food in a third world country. I wonder, yeah, so that's what the effects are. When you get to the, when you land, how severe are you feeling? Do you feel like you need to go to the hospital? Or
I never felt like I needed to go to the hospital, but like being in China, they're like, oh, here are these herbs, drink this tea, do this. I was like, all right, which I was better probably in about 3 or 4 days. But then it took me probably like 1 or 2 weeks to get my appetite back to where it was. It's kind of like I've told some people like, I've also had COVID, and I would equate food poisoning to COVID, like having full-blown COVID to where like one of my symptoms was like coughing up blood when I had COVID. Like it was equal to food poisoning, except with COVID, it didn't feel as bad as food poisoning. COVID lasted like 2 weeks. Food poisoning was like all 2 weeks of stuff compacted into like 3 or 4 days. It was like way worse than COVID, but it only lasted for like 3 days.